Yo, gamers. TCG fucking sucks. I've been spending like nonstop just playing OCG formats because, let's be real here, this format is dog shit. We got Dragon Link is taking 20-minute turns, Bear statues are stopping you from playing, and like everything else is just Dogmatica variants, Zodiac variants, or just normal summon Alistair. So recently, I just been not even bothering. Like, I just been doing side events and playing whatever with it, and that's it. But in my spare time, my buddy Peter and I have been doing a lot of testing and playing. Shout out to Peter. Uh, and just playing OCG. And I've finally come to the realization that OCG is so much fucking better than like American or European TCG. The cards are cheaper, everything's lower rarity. Yeah, they're not as pretty, but that doesn't mean anything when you don't have a $500 fucking bottomless pit in your wallet. Uh, the format is a lot more balanced with some minor exceptions. And on top of that, you get to play with Max C, which is one of the better balancing cards, or cards for balancing a format, than anything the TCG has right now. The only comparable thing would be like Nibiru, but that's just, and even now, OCG doesn't even need it because Maxi just does the job better. And they have more cards to out both Nibiru and Maxi. So, I figure while I'm here, being a dead channel, I will go ahead and go over the deck I've been playing for OCG a lot. Uh, as you can probably tell, since Colossus is at 1 in OCG, I've been playing almost exclusively Thunder with maybe a little bit of True Draco on the side. But let's just get right into this, dude, because like it's so different how much different this deck is. God, I'm such a fucking good actor. So main deck monsters. This is where TCG and OCG really break apart. Is that TCG has both of these cards at 3, where OCG has Hawk at 1 and Solar, or excuse me, and Roar at 2. I'm not completely sure why that is because Thunder Dragon Fusion basically guarantees that this is all, both of these are always going to be usable in multiple turns and searchable again. And as long as Thunder Dragon Fusion and Roar are at 1, the Roar plus Fusion loop is still totally playable. So I don't understand why they have these at less than multiples. I assume it's to make like Solar plus Hawk way less consistent. Which, yeah, that board of like Solar Hawk is a free Link 4 plus Colossus, but realistically, is that a problem? I don't know. To be honest, and I think if, and this is just another difference between TCG and OCG. I think if Colossus came back to 1 right now, you wouldn't even need to touch these cards because like the deck isn't nearly as explosive enough to do anything about it. Plus, if we're on this metaphorical place where Colossus come back to 1, then realistically Maxi could come back as well. That's a whole nother can of worms I'm not trying to open yet. For the rest, 3 of all the other ones: Thunder Dragon, Matrix, 3 Dark. Yeah, I mean, like, you're gonna run 3 of almost all these, especially if you have these ones are limited. Thunder Dragon gets you multiple removals. Matrix is your quick effect removal by choice, and then Dark also is a quick effect removal that gives you a search. So you gotta run 3 of this. You can make an argument to play less of Matrix just because Thunder Dragon Fusion just exists, but honestly, I'm gonna play 3 because that's what I'm really comfortable with. It's super solid as well. For the starters, this is another big difference between TCG and OCG, is that they prefer Aloof Lupine over Batteryman Solar. And while playing OCG format, I would have to agree. Solar without Hawk is a lot less combo effective. The best way to do it was Solar plus Hawk, Solar dump Roar, Hawk pitch, summon Roar, make a token, and then just go off. Of course, that was back when we had 3 Colossus, so I'm not completely sure how that would work now. But with Aloof Lupine plus any Thunder, including the Batteryman Solar, it makes almost every play liable, or any hand playable, because you can always end on Thunder Dragon Titan plus Colossus at that point, because you Aloof Lupine banishing a Thunder and Roar, preferably the Roar is in your hand, and then you either banish a Dark or a Thunder Dragon from your deck, so that way you have access to Fusion to either make Colossus or not. But you can then summon off of Roar, get a card off Dark, pitch the Hawk, summon back another card, turn this plus one of the Thunders into either IP Masquerena or Verte Anaconda, depending on what you're expecting to see. If you have Verte, you go ahead and make Thunder Dragon Titan by returning everything to the graveyard or back to the deck after you make the Colossus with the other monster. Or if you just have IP Masquerena and you want to play around Nibiru or something like that, you just make Access Code, or if you have enough resources, the Chaos Goddess, which is really, really solid. And then one Chaos Creator. I ended up cutting both Lord and Duo for this card because it essentially serves the same purpose, right? It's better to draw turn one in theory. Lord is the only exception here maybe being that Lord is more playable turn one because you don't have to have as many cards to go into before making this. But with this, it basically means that you can also it's also another way to cycle your Colossus. It gets you another body on the board, and it's a Thunder on its own and a Dark. So it's not only a lure target, but it's also searchable off Fusion. So you don't really need to play multiples of this. And the only exception is that Duo is searchable off Dark, which yeah comes up way more. But I mean, when you're having something that's this powerful versus a Duo, which is basically just a 2800 vanilla that can sometimes get to 31, like this is just way better. And then you also play one of each of the baby dragons. So recently, I just went over the ban list of OCG versus TCG, and one of the big differences that they have is that they have these things at three. They also have things like grass. They have three fairy tale snow. They have two grass. They have what's it called, like the three baby dragons, like I mentioned. Colossus is another big one, of course. They also have multiple of the dangers. I think the only one that's limited is either Nessie, Jackalope, or Snake, and they're just at one or two. I mean, you could in theory just play the full power Dragon Link or the Dragon Thunder deck. The only difference is that you don't have LP anymore. But when you have things like Grass and the Baby Dragons and Chaos Base at three, that's insane. So in the future, you might see me trying to make that deck work. But unfortunately, it's just a matter of getting the cards because, believe it or not, Japanese and Korean cards are a lot harder to get in the States than you'd think. All right, hand traps. This is the big ones. Three Ash, of course, like it's the most generic hand trap, but let's be real here. When you have three Max C in the format, you're gonna play three Max C. Like this card is so amazing. The only bad matchup it has against right now is I'm gonna be honest, there's not really one that comes to mind. Like if you're playing OCG, maybe Striker, but even then, like you can chain it to Ray. You can hit it when they summon the Ray. That way you can um, it either forces out the tag out, which means that they won't be able to tag out during the battle phase, or they're going to be making Hayate immediately, or you'll just draw three cards because they're going to go Rei into Shizuku, into Hayate or Kagakuri and all that, and then maybe Kaina or Zeke. So even then, it's still a really good card just to break even if you're just trying to dig. And in those matchups, you're not worried about dying anyway. So yeah, I love this thing. But the big reason why this card is at three in OCG not only is because they have three Ash, but they have a lot of hand trap interruption. Like I'll show you. We'll just go ahead and jump into the spells. Three crossout designator. This card is what makes or breaks Maxi because like with Maxi at three, everyone's playing it, and also everyone's playing the crossout designator because not only is it great in mirror matches, but it also stops generic hand traps like Ash, Maxi, and even if you're playing its combo, Nibiru. Because most folks don't actually play combo over there for a few different reasons. One of which definitely being Maxi. But Crossout Designator is just such a good card. It also stops Called by the Grave and Crossout Designator. So if you have Crossout Designator and you're trying to just make your Maxi stick, this card has not only a way to stop it, but also a way to ensure that Maxi resolves. They also have two Call by the Grave, which of course does come up, and you're going to play it because Maxi's really good, and the only thing this doesn't stop is Nibiru. So realistically, there's no reason not to play this in the main deck, especially when the Thunder Dragon deck is a lot slower in OCG because it doesn't need to be nearly as combo eccentric. So yeah, Maxi is so good. I love the card. I wish it was at three. A lot of folks disagree, including our very good friend Kyle. But yeah, dude. To be honest, let's be real here. If everybody that says they don't want Maxi at three, those are the same people that have a playset of Maxi put away, just like everyone else, because they know the moment it comes back, it's gonna be immediately played, as long as they don't put it to one or two. Konami. One Gold Sark is a standard. Two Lure. This card's at two in OCG. I assume this is for Thunder Dragons and also the Danger lineup. They also have Saryuja at one, so that might be why they're not so worried about the Dangers being at multiples. But either way, you're playing the max copies of this as possible since it's essentially Pot of Greed. Three Chaos Space. You play this to get not only to the Creator but to the Baby Dragons. Opening this plus Soul or plus Roar or any Thunder. The important one being Roar because you can trigger it off of the White Dragon that you searched. Is basically full combo. Like your optimal turn one board is like Heratic Seal with a Verte, a Colossus, and a Titan. That would be your optimal board. Of course, that plays in Nibiru, and we don't play a target for the Herratic Seal, but if we were, we would be playing something like Brotar, so that way we can pitch a card, target itself, and then search Levineer. But that's a lot of vengeance just for one situation, so I've opted not to play that. Two Thunder Dragon Fusion. Again, as long as this thing is at one with one copy of Roar, the loop is always playable. Yeah, this card's really good. Honestly, I thought about playing multiple of this just because playing through Nibiru does come up a lot, except in OCG they don't main deck Nibiru nearly as often. They'd rather side deck it. So sometimes it'd be easier just to play three, this maybe one more on the side, just so that way you can play around Nibiru a lot better. And then one Duster. This card's been at one in OCG forever. We just only recently got it back here, but I think it's a lot better in TCG or in OCG than it is in TCG. We don't have nearly as many back row decks in the format, where almost every single deck, even the combo decks, have some sort of reliable back row in OCG. Virtual would be an excellent example. Hitting the Chuche is really nice, especially since you're already staring down a VFD plus a Chuche. Having this plus Imperm would also allow you to just turn off VFD, though that's, of course, if they don't shotgun it. All right, that's it for the main deck. 40 cards. It's very different in terms of cards, but it plays almost the same way. It's just a little bit slower because we have only one Colossus. Extra deck. Of course, the one, the only Colossus. It's insane. I've played both TCG, OCG now, and it's insane how different it is to play one Colossus versus none. Even if it is super easy to out with like Super Poly, Nightmare Unicorn, Axis Code, or whatever, or just a bunch of other big ways of dealing with one card bodies. It's just the ability to turn off or turn on any Thunder Dragon monster's effect while it's on the field is just too good not to have. And honestly, I wish this deck had, even if we don't ever get Colossus back, I would like to see some sort of fusion monster that has the same summoning condition and protection effect as Colossus, but just without the mistake clause on top of it. Like maybe a 3,000 beater. That way it's bridged the gap between Titan and Colossus in terms of power. But in the same vein, this thing is amazing. I wish we had this back at one in TCG. I still hope and pray we get one back because honestly, the deck's almost completely unviable without the Colossus at one because it has no body, it has no end board. Titan Pass doesn't mean anything when you have to use your Dark to get to your Titan and you have to hard draw Matrix. Or you have to banish it off of Lupine. 3 copies of Titan. Three. You use this because with the one Colossus, you have to be able to loop it multiple times. You don't always want to loop a Titan with Titan. So yeah. That's it for the fusions. I don't play Kaminari Attack, even though Retort Fusion is a thing in OCG. You just don't need it at this point. There's a lot more consistent ways to get to Titan, and Thunder Dragon Fusion plus Colossus is itself a easy to make Thunder monster that allows you to make Titan. So in those situations where you do want it to come up, it just doesn't come up. Unfortunately, these are the only 3 cards I don't own in Korean for the extra deck. The BLS link, if linking off a Colossus for this, or a Titan for this thing is just so good. You just make a towers that is free removal, plus it's really good in the mirror. Verte, like I said, this one's actually more, this is like one of the few exceptions of cards in OCG that's more expensive in TCG. And here's the funny thing. It's at 1 in OCG, and they have Dragoon banned, so it's not like they're making Dragoon with this thing. It's, to my knowledge, it's just to make Thunder Dragon Titan. I don't know how I feel about that, but I have one in English, and I'm not about to pay $50 for a card I'm never going to play in TCG, so I just use mine as a Verte for now. IP, I don't own this in Korean yet, same reason, but yeah, like, this thing's also really nice as a turn 1 breaker. It also makes Axis Code really, really potent. I mean, a 5,300 beater that can't be destroyed by card effects is nothing to scoff at, especially when you can't respond to it blowing up your cards. So sometimes making this turn 1 is also viable because you can make Unicorn on your opponent's turn, which of course is a good thing. But more often than not, you'd rather make Verte Anaconda, because Verte unfortunately is not something like Dragoon where, well, because Dragoon is banned in OCG, it's not really as potent. Because, like I said earlier, Titan Pass isn't anything, but Dragoon Pass is a lot more potent and is not nearly as powerful in this deck as it is with Dragoon. 1 Link Rebo just to link off the Matrix. Sometimes this comes up. The extra deck's not really super tight, so this is probably one of the easier cards to cut if you want more removal. Or if you want to play, well, you can't play second Verte, but you know what I mean. If you want to play more generic cards. Striker Dragon, this is for the combo with the Baby Dragons. I'll explain that combo in a bit because it does change up a little bit depending on what your hand is. And then, before I mentioned Herratic Seal, you make this with Striker plus your Baby Dragon to basically either to pot a greed and then make a free negate or free bounce on your opponent's turn. Like I said earlier, I would like to fit a target for this thing's tribute effect, because it would allow you to play through Nibiru a lot better. But honestly, Nibiru is in the side deck most of the time, and I don't want to opt for 2 main deck slots just to play a Rotar and a Rotar target. Cross Sheep. This is what you usually make when you're trying to go for Access Code. You'll usually make this Fusion Summon, revive a card, and then you'll turn the Fusion Monster and whatever you summon back into the IP Masquerena, and then you just make Access Code to swing over stuff. Chaos Goddess. This is kind of a slot filler, but it does generally come up in the mirror. So, for example, Solar plus White Dragon is usually going to make is not only an out to Colossus, but it deals with it puts a big body on your board that can't be Nibiru'd, which is also kind of sick. It's also in pseudo interruption, not really in the mirror match because banishing your opponent's cards in the mirror match is really bad, with the exception of like Titan, Colossus, or Fusion. But yeah, it does come up. Again, this is another thing you could probably cut. And then the Access Code package: Nightmare, Nightmare, and Nightmare. All these cards are super potent. This is usually how you're ending games. You're ending games with usually like a Colossus, a Titan, or with an Access Code, and then just beating your opponent to death. Yeah. To be honest, the deck is not really super duper complicated. It's not, and it's not super unbalanced either, because the only reason this deck does anything, of course, is because of Colossus and having continual access to it every single turn with things like Thunder Dragon Roar, Thunder Dragon Fusion. It makes a difference a lot. And I'm not going to say Colossus is something that isn't fair or is fair, but I think for the context of just playing Thunder Dragons, it is light and day between playing it and not playing it. And even if it meant that we have to put soul, or we have to basically carbon copy the OCG list onto the TCG list, if it means getting Colossus back, for any Thunder Dragon player, I think they should just 100% jump on the deck of that bus. Like, you should just get on board with that, because Colossus is it's such a house. It's something your opponent has to deal with, and they have to put cards in to deal with it. Even though nowadays we have things like Super Poly that are largely played in the side deck for Shaddolls, and also played for Dragon Link, of course, to make Starving Venom, or the Orphis Thingamajig, the one that's basically Starving Venom but requires a fusion. But we also have Nightmare Unicorn in the game, and realistically, everyone should be playing something like that anyway, just to deal with stuff like Colossus or just to break a board. Colossus is surprisingly easy to deal with nowadays. It's not nearly as easy as it was to deal with back in, say, Orcus format, because every 2 cards was full card Orcus combo. But it's something just to think about. In that, I do think OCG has it better in terms of their banlist design, with the exception of all the semi-limited cards that could realistically either be at 1. Because like that, I'm gonna be honest with you here. I agree with Simo on this one. I think the semi-limitless is reserved for specifically just malicious, and even then, you could honestly just limit malicious and have the same effect. But yeah, I think Colossus can come to 1, and I think that if we brought it into this format, it would definitely spice things up. And I don't think we have the combo decks right now are not nearly potent enough or run the cards viable to make this thing, with the exception of maybe Nemesis Corridor. But for Nemesis Corridor to work, you not only have to hard draw it, which is not super easy, especially in OCG, because they have Saryuja at 1 and all the dangers. Well, fair enough, draw into it, but more often than not, you'll just end up hitting the Nemesis Corridor anyway. But you have to be natively banishing cards. I think Dragon Link, if we were to give the benefit of the doubt that for some reason they don't use up Tracer before getting to the Nemesis Corridor, that they would run Colossus, probably. Maybe? Jokingly. But I don't think Nemesis Corridor itself, especially when in OCG, the format is similar enough with the exception of Virtual World and Drytrons that it's just not necessary to keep this thing banned anymore. I don't think it's relatively easy for the decks that could splash in Nemesis Corridor to make it. And if OCG can't do it with way more access to better combo cards, with the exception of LP, of course, like I mentioned earlier, then I don't think it's a problem over here. So yeah, that's my little spiel. I hope you guys enjoyed. I genuinely don't enjoy the modern format, and it's taken me a lot. And I've not had a break like this since like Dragon Ruler format. And let's be honest, Dragon Ruler format was probably more fair, because at least you got a turn in Dragon Ruler format. But expect to see more OCG stuff in the future. I'm getting another box of Maximum Crisis later this week, and like I said, I've been playing just to collect OCG cards, just because I want to rebuild old decks with OCG, because it's a lot fucking cheaper. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to learn more about OCG, I would recommend leaving comments because I genuinely enjoy this. I do a lot of playtesting with OCG. Again, shout out to my boy Peter for basically hooking me up with the entire deck, with the exception of the Maxis and the Ashes. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. See you later.